So, welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Jen, for having me.
I am so excited to have a fellow podcaster. You have a podcast called Business the Calm Way, and you are helping introverted, highly sensitive people break through and have abundant, extraordinary lives. I am so excited for this conversation.
I can't wait to get into this topic and chat with you about it. So it's just mind blowing. It's blown my mind, and I really hope to help a lot of other people out there.
So we were just having a little warm-up conversation before we dove into this podcast about introverted and highly sensitive people. And sometimes we don't even know that this is the cause of our overwhelm. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what does that look like?
Okay, so let's go with the easier one first, introversion. So, introversion, extroversion, there's people that go, actually, no, I'm more of an ambivert, in between. It is very much like a scale of being somebody who potentially is more quiet, more reserved, to being somebody who's really extroverted, really outgoing, very bold in the way that they show up socially. And you can kind of be anywhere within that spectrum. The main differences are that an introvert is somebody who will lose energy. They'll lose energy, and they'll need to gain energy by going back to having quiet time, to spending time on their own. And the extrovert actually gains energy by being in social situations. So it's actually, those two people, especially from a business perception, it's interesting to see how they both run a business, but also how they thrive in their business as well. And the other part of this is obviously the highly sensitive person. So I think if I start this by talking about what a highly sensitive person isn't, because I think there's so much confusion about this, because people, oh, you're so sensitive, or you're so emotional, or you're so dramatic. And, so many people are kind of tarnished with this perception that if they are more of a sensitive person, that, they're not good enough because they feel different to other people. And, this can show up in so many different ways from childhood as well. Being highly sensitive, it can be a hereditary, traits that you inherit from your parents. And it can develop throughout your life as well, through different circumstances, your own conditioning, through, your own belief system and how you view yourself in the world. And, I think that, if you are somebody who's highly sensitive and you've experienced being called sensitive before, you're perhaps somebody who has experienced large amounts of overwhelm in your life. You've perhaps been called shy, or you feel that you don't lack enough confidence to be out and about in the world, whether that's in your business or in your previous careers, because you get overstimulated quickly, you get overwhelmed. And when that happens, it's like your brain switches off. It's gone, too much. I'm at my level now. And we need to, like the introvert, need to go back and have time to ourselves. And it's all about managing energy. It's about managing boundaries. So the highly sensitive term was founded by a psychologist called Dr. Elaine Aron back in the 1990s. And it's categorized by 4 relatively easy traits to remember in the form of the acronym of DOES. So the first one is you process the world really deeply. You have depth of processing. You feel deeply, you think deeply. Highly sensitive people can overthink all the time. It's that constant being on the go. And, because of that, you can then get overstimulated, which is the O of DOES. The empathy part is also known as emotional reactivity, but it's also linked to high empathy as well. So you're open, your senses are open to the world. And when you're navigating life with other people, you almost can feel what they feel. That is essentially what empathy is. But I just want to bring it back into context for your podcast, talking about it from business. People who struggle with online marketing, with social media marketing, being in that world is massively overwhelming. It's that constant bombardment of noise, visually, and people, got lots of videos and stuff at the moment as well. And just by being there can really, really burn you out. And this brings me on to the S of the does model, and that is sensory sensitivity. So your five senses are essentially, the volume is turned up on your five senses, and lights will seem brighter, noises seem louder. People who are highly sensitive can startle more. I jump for life every time my dog barks. It's that kind of thing. Sirens are really loud, or it's just kind of that feeling. Or your skin's very sensitive. Your potentially, like, your other kind of humanness is very sensitive as well. People have sensitive digestion, or you might struggle with migraines or things like this. So it's kind of noticing that those things are a factor, but this is not a limitation. This is a character trait, which is basically reflects a heightened nervous system. So it's biological, it's part of you, but it's actually a defense mechanism. And it brings so much depth to what you can bring. You're more empathetic to other people. You're a great leader. You can see problems. You can find finer distinctions between situations, and actually, being slightly more kind of focused on problems can be helpful. But it's when these traits are misunderstood, and it's when these traits have gone unidentified for however many decades of a person's life. In mine, it was about 35 years. And then what it means to being able to feel empowered about being a highly sensitive person in a very non-highly sensitive person world, because high sensitivity actually equates to about 20% of the population. It's not always about being introverted. 30% of highly sensitive people are actually extroverts.
Wow.
And it's equal between men and women. So I'm not just talking to women here, even though, that is kind of the sensitivity thing has been, that is the belief that women are sensitive. And I think it's really key to kind of reflect the struggle that both extroverts and men have in managing this trait, in the stigma behind being sensitive. So I hope I've shared kind of a really kind of, I'll say, brief overview of what being highly sensitive is, but also the fact of, why, how it could be showing up through, being more overwhelmed, being frequently overwhelmed, burnt out, suffering more often with anxiety and depression, low self-esteem because you feel different, you can't manage and cope with life like other people can. So I hope I've shared enough there.
Yeah, and I think well, there were so many things that like lit up for me, and I know that I'm a highly sensitive person. I was told that when I was a child, and I was lucky, I was fortunate that I had a family that like got support for me, with people that understood, so that I could make my way through life. Because when you talked about social media and this whole, we all are trying to market on social media, it's part of the reason I love podcasting, because it doesn't feel as, I want to say vulnerable, but it's more vulnerable at the same time. Like there's the two factors of like, I can go deeper, but it doesn't seem as like I have to absorb as much. as social media. So for all of my marketers on social media who are highly sensitive, like what is something we can do to try to like keep that nervous system from going crazy, where we have to sit in our beds for like a week where we're like, okay, I need my time, family go away, friends go away, let me just be by myself to recharge. Like, is there a way that we can manage this crazy social media marketing thing?
So much you can do, absolutely. So I mean, the first is kind of learning to know your own highly sensitive traits. How do you know that you're overwhelmed? How do you know that you're overstimulated? What's happening to signify that you're at that point where you need to take a break? The second part is, it's really kind of about allowing yourself to take a break. It's managing your own boundaries with this as well. A lot of people have to manage guilt. They feel guilty about taking time for themselves. There's a lot of, kind of building up personal strategies and habits, that serve you to show up more often than if you were burnt out. And I think that's the kind of the key to this. It's all about self-awareness. It's all about responding to yourself with compassion when you do burn out, not beating yourself up because you were meant to be kind of getting 5 blogs out and two PR articles out and doing a live on social media and everything else. It's about really looking at being realistic, managing your time to set yourself up to win, and not to see the traits as being a hindrance, but also leaning into them as well. Learning about how you deeply process the world can actually connect you, deeply to your intuition. You make more aligned decisions. You can trust yourself more. So if things are kind of feeling really difficult, or you're getting stuck in, being consistent with marketing, which I know so many people do, and I fall into this sometimes myself. And sometimes it's because we're not taking the right action. We're not taking the action that's aligned with us. And this is one thing that I've found myself, is that actually I prefer different types of marketing to social media. That's also a possibility, is looking at the other types. So if you can put yourself and, do more work where you can thrive, you can be more effective. Living calmly, which is one thing that I teach and I form my coaching around. And the way that I live my life is about, how can you maintain that connection to calm throughout, kind of also managing your mindset as well. So for example, me doing this interview with you now, massively outside my comfort zone. I got ads live on YouTube, people. But it's doing something like this is like, because I'm so totally connected to how I'm calm, and I can bring myself back into that moment. It's then being able to kind of create that kind of experience. Does that make sense, or am I just kind of talking?
No, it's I don't think so. I mean, it's really like, what I'm hearing is that it's really connecting to yourself and giving yourself realistic expectations and goals. Because I, as you're going through this, I caught myself. I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, I've got 4 podcast interviews today. I've got 2 meetings with my clients, and I'm supposed to be recording 3 podcasts to go out of my own. And I'm just like, yeah, as a highly sensitive person, tomorrow I'm probably going to be smoked, because I didn't check in with myself. I didn't allow my, I'm all about be unique, own who you are. Yet I set myself up to live someone else's life that isn't as sensitive. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And you've made some really valid points there as well. And I think it's really important to, another thing is kind of personality diversity, and seeing that, there isn't one way to be successful. there are, 80% of people that are in business, because 20% of people make up highly sensitive people. So if we think of that as a population, 80% of those people are going to be non-highly sensitive people. They're going to be, non-highly sensitive people have more of a capacity of doing. They are the doers. They just take action. There's more risk being taken. We're more aware of what might happen if we do take action, the things that could go wrong. It's not that we're more pessimistic or negative. It's just that, we're more aware of those things. So it's also about kind of practicing positive psychology, practicing those positive mindsets, and kind of, when you're going into that space, comparing yourself maybe to somebody who isn't that person who you want to compare yourself to, which sometimes it's really easy to do. That's one thing that I found myself changing a lot of over the last kind of couple of years, is noticing that I was following a lot of people who were very, very aggressive with their marketing, very, very outgoing, very bold. And then I was trying to recreate that. And it just led me into overwhelm. My self-doubt was just all over the shop. And I actually started to really resent my business, because I just hated showing up, because I never felt good enough. The imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all of those things were just all over the place. But then as soon as I kind of started to find people who I really, really resonated with, and those people suddenly started showing up as soon as I started looking for them, and as soon as I started spending more time with them, I started noticing, oh, that's better. it just felt better. But it's not that, those other people that are out there, they're bold and they're aggressive with what they're doing. There are certain times when you need those people, when you're pressing up against your fear, but you're ready to take action, and you just almost sometimes need that person to be like, yeah, go for it, kind of thing. There's a time and a place, but it's about kind of learning about when that right time for you is, managing your boundaries. This is essentially, kind of one of those strategies in how you can, set yourself up for success, really.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate some of the things that you said, is that, we do need to align with the people that we use to coach to move forward. Like you said, sometimes it's good to have that person that'll push you outside that box. But for me, I've had more coaches than I can count, spent more money than I can even care to ever admit. But it wasn't until I found somebody doing what I want to do as the person that I want to be that it really made sense. And it took slowing down, finding the person that aligned with me, that aligned and matched my energy.
Perfectly. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's so important, is finding the right coach, but then also, like I said, finding the right coach for that one specific bit of work that you're doing. If it is something, you need that tough love, you need somebody, or if it's something that's more emotive and you're struggling with self-belief, is taking a more of a, I don't know what kind of how to explain it really, but yeah, it's kind of thinking, well, what is it that I need? And I think that, I suppose through my experience, and I'm noticing through some of the people that I work with, is how much we can react to, when we're not feeling in control of our outcomes, so our business success, when things aren't going the way that we want, we're online, and we are also responding to a hell of a lot of marketing and people who do it very, very well. So it is also managing that as well, and kind of thinking, what is this something I really need? What part of me is reacting to this? Is it something that I need to work on, or am I just kind of reacting with fear? That's been something that's been quite impactful for me, and actually kind of almost coming back to yourself and thinking, well, what is the outcome? What am I trying to achieve? What do I have, and what do I need to find? What help do I need? And it's kind of spending that time, and if that means spending that time with somebody to work that out and then going to take action, then great. Or, you know, but it's kind of this whole reaction thing that I kind of experience. I don't know if that's anything, you know, anyone else kind of experiences that as well. But yeah, so I didn't actually, yeah, it's kind of gone off track a little bit.
But I think that's an important point, because I tend to react, and marketing is really good. People have learned how to get under our skin. And when you are sensitive to that, it's like, oh my goodness, this is the new shiny object. This is the new shiny object. This is the new shiny object. For one of the things I've done is I've let go of those early bird quick sign up bonuses, and I let it sit in my body, because once that energy comes down, does it still feel good? Like, is this still something I want? Or did they just get me so like hyped up and overwhelmed, and, you know, like that energy just kind of, I feel like it's just, I can't even explain it, like scattered in my brain. Like, I've got to have this shiny thing. And the next day I'm like, oh, buyer's remorse. Now that I sat with it, that was really heightened energy at that time. And I know it's a marketing tactic, and it works great on me because I do feed into that energy so much.
But it's also a great way of actually thinking, well, what worked on me well, you know, it worked on me. So what they do is like, you know, thinking actually it's great marketing, and it's a great way to learn, I suppose. But at the same time, it is, there's a lot, there seems to be a lot to manage with being a highly sensitive person in an online business world. And it's massively about learning so much about yourself and constantly developing yourself, you know, looking, you know, up leveling yourself constantly, pushing yourself out your comfort zone. But I mean, I suppose talking on that actually about comfort zones, and you know, the talk that's out there about feel the fear and do it anyway. Absolutely love this concept, but this really held me back for a long time. And I think that so many people who struggle with confidence, struggle with being visible, struggle with you know, having to navigate those imposter syndrome thoughts and feelings of I don't know enough, or I'm having to compete with the person who's been in it for like 10 years. And actually, you know, that's a whole different story really. But you know, it's those things, or being a perfectionist and holding back so much from actually doing what you need to do in your business, is, I've completely lost my train of thought there. There's another thing, you know, go off and into a tangent. Sorry, what was I saying?
You kind of were going off on a tangent, but kind of coming back to like that self, when you were really getting overwhelmed and like trying to move back into feeling for yourself. And I'm like, my brain stopped too.
Yeah.
Like, we're feeding off each other's energy.
Do you know what? I think it's actually like a common thing is to go down rabbit holes and then to get lost and then go, where was I? It's quite a frequent thing. Whether or not it's a highly sensitive thing, I don't know. It's just it's just being me. Sorry. Right, back to what we were talking about.
Well, the other side of this is we've been talking kind of about like what the sensitivities can look like. What are some of the superpowers of being a highly sensitive person? Because I always love to flip the switch. We focus on like, okay, well, as a highly sensitive person, you've got to focus on these things. But there are some true magical gifts of being a highly sensitive person.
Absolutely. I mean, the top one I think is got to be empathy. You know, having deep empathy for other people, and that having almost like an intuitive connection to helping other people. So people who are in the helping businesses, you know, coaches, therapists, and people who you know, have that desire. We almost have like a shared value of helping people. You know, that is a massive part. And there's actually scientific evidence that shows that there's part of the brain that has what's called mirror neurons, So when you're experiencing somebody else's emotional situation, your mirror neurons would actually create the same experience that you're seeing. So you're picking up both verbal, non-verbal communication cues. Your brain's kind of recreating that in you. So you end up actually feeling the same as what somebody else does, which is, it's amazing on one hand, you know, but it can be a real, you know, it can really hold you back sometimes, you know, as we're talking about, you know, being on social media all the time. But it brings so much connection to other people. You know, you want to connect deeply, you love deep and meaningful conversations. So, you know, that it does actually aid itself in helping you to build relationships within business, to connect, you know, to if you, you know, if you can feel able to kind of network and to get into those spaces, you know, you've got massive skills in being able to connect well. And also on an intuition level as well, you know, being able to understand and use your intuition to understand other people's perceptions. You know, you're almost wise to their understanding. And, you know, this is one thing that's brought massive depth in what I do, you know, in coaching and feeding back what you're hearing from somebody and almost kind of like offering them the information that they didn't have. It's quite weird. It's very, you know, the obviously intuitive coaching is massively impactful. You know, I think, you know, talking about potentially, you know, like the whole problem solving thing, you know, you as a highly sensitive person, you bring in more information from the world, you see finer distinctions. You know, it's not just a tree, you see the color of the leaves, the different colors of the leaves, the, you know, how many leaves it's got, you know, the, you know, what type of tree it is. It's so much more detailed. I mean, that's a very basic example, but it's almost like I like to explain it as somebody who's less highly sensitive almost just has a normal window of the world. But a highly sensitive person could range from having like big, you know, French doors to having massive bifold, you know, kind of the whole side of the house exposed. You know, it's having that much focus. And with doing that, it means that you can have such an amazingly deep filled life, a deep inner world, feeling connected to nature, to other people, to the universe and things like that. And it's an amazing experience to have when you open yourself up to it. It's just being able to do that means that you have to manage boundaries in obviously managing what comes back in again. One thing that I found was that I constantly let my external world in. I was governed by my external world and what was going on. But, you know, once I began to protect myself and to have boundaries and kind of, you know, it became apparent, you know, that I needed to spend more time on my internal world. And, you know, and I think that, you know, people who are feeling very overwhelmed, very burnt out, it is about that. It's kind of, what are you spending too much time focusing on? Come back to yourself, reconnect to yourself. Because when you do that, you build self-trust, you know, you connect to your intuition, you start making aligned decisions, you start to feel more confident, you start to show up with authenticity, you start to feel capable of being vulnerable. You know, it's you know, it's developing kind of that experience, I suppose.
I love that. I love that you're bringing this to other entrepreneurs, other business owners, because I think your keywords that I saw were organized, calm, and confident. And as a highly sensitive person, I could use a little bit more of all of those in my life. So with that being said, where can people find you?
So I think probably the easiest place is my website, so which is rachel-boswell.com. I am on Facebook and Instagram, you know, fairly new, fairly low key, to be fair, but I am on there. Or they can come and listen to the podcast, which is Business the Calm Way. And yeah, and lots of other bits, but those are probably the main ones. I don't want to overwhelm anybody.
we're like talking overwhelmed. We're like, here's the 15 plate. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to I'll make it super easy for everyone and get them as links in the show notes for you.
Amazing,
Also.
thank you.
But if someone were to walk away with just that one thing that they take to heart, this one thing that they take with them for the rest of their life, what would you want that to be?
You are not broken. You're not broken. Nobody's broken. It's not that you lack anything. You don't lack confidence. You just haven't connected to it. You've lost it along the way, but everything is in there. And I think one of the main things that I actually help people who are really stuck from moving forward with their dreams, from, you know, whether it is that they want to start a business or whether they've started it but they just don't know how to move forward, is actually to come back to your comfort zone and, you know, and kind of reconnect with your strengths. You know, take one step at a time, take the next step. You know, this is all about building confidence. And I just realized what I remember talking about now when I lost track, which is about the fear of failure thing. And you know, this is the biggest thing that I found was, you know, coming back to yourself. And I call this building a retreat zone. You know, and you can just come back to yourself, you can, you know, recharge, you can reconnect, you can learn about yourself, build self-awareness, and then think about, well, what's the next step that I need to take? Overwhelmed, come back to yourself and then ask what's the next step you can take. You know, and then it just reduces down that pressure, the overwhelm and the expectation as well.